Hi, welcome Brightlights to Healers with Humor, a podcast brought to you by Candice, the visionary behind Indiglow Soul, and Shelly, the owner of Finding Your Light. Join us as we explore the intricacies of our healing experiences and share the wisdom we've accumulated along the way. In each episode, we're going to invite you into our intimate conversations where we candidly explore the highs and the lows of our healing experiences. Through our podcast, we want to extend our hands to those navigating their own path of healing, offering a sanctuary of understanding and companionship. Whether you're navigating through the shadows of self-doubt or reveling in the glow of self-discovery, Healers with Humor is there to honor the strength that it takes to heal and celebrate the joys of self-love and growth. Join us on this journey, embracing the beauty of healing and the power of community. Welcome to Season 1, Episode 1 of Healers with Humor, an introduction to our healing journey with Candice and Shelly.
Hey, Shelly.
Hi. All right, so I'm feeling, aside from lighting a self-love candle today, I found this online and I just wanted to sort of set the tone with understanding the journey. A journey like this sets you on your path to find your own truth on who you are and how you want to live your life. Whew. This journey is very personal. You make the rules and you choose the direction. All right. And the card I pulled for us today is from the Enchanted Map Oracle cards. And the card is number 51, Moonlight. All right. Your intuition allows you to see beyond the mundane, the logical, and the analytical. Follow it. Sound like it was written for us, doesn't it?
It sure does. It sure does. We are both super analytical.
For sure.
And so to be able to look beyond that is a huge piece.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited about today being our first episode and really understanding from each of us and sharing with everyone else really how our healing journey started.
Yeah, we each have a very different story about how we got to where we are today. So I'll go ahead and get started. My journey really started in 2018. My husband and I had built a new house and we were moving in, and I had some really, really bad foot pain that I had had for a while, and it just wasn't going away. And so once we moved into the new house, I knew I needed to do something about it more so than what I had previously. So I went to the doctor. I did all the normal things people do, right? I took anti-inflammatories. I went into a boot for 6 weeks because that's what they thought I was, plantar fasciitis. I followed all the rules and it never went away. It was just relentless. So after literally dragging my foot behind me for months, I started working with a naturopath, and she was learning emotion code. I'd never heard of that before, but I was desperate and just willing to try anything except a cortisone shot, which is what they wanted to do to my foot. I was like, no, thanks. And so emotion code sounded a lot better. And what we realized is that I had trapped emotions in the bottom of my foot that literally just had a balled up ball of nerves on the bottom of my foot that was preventing me from moving forward, because that's what your feet do, right? And I was amazed, shocked, quite honestly. I had no idea that I was trapping emotions in my body. I didn't know how that worked, why I was doing it, but over a period of time, she continued to release these emotions, the majority of which were not mine. Another shocking factor, they were my mother's and my father's and my brother's. And I thought, why am I holding their emotions in my foot? And so that really brought a light onto me being an empath. And that's a whole nother journey we can talk about another day. But that really began the journey for me. So understanding that I had a whole bunch of other people's emotions. By the way, they were all evicted and the pain never came back. I've literally never had the pain come back to my foot. And so at that point, I was hooked and wanted to clear anything and everything that didn't serve me. So that really started my healing healing journey. And then once I was able to spend, probably a year cleaning out a bunch of stuff, I just lived a very unconscious life up until that point. I did all the things I was supposed to do. I was a good girl. And so once I started clearing out my lenses, so to speak, got cleaner, things started to shift and look different and feel different and sound different. And in this new neighborhood that we lived in, we went to a happy hour. And, I was just expecting some light, breezy, happy hour conversation. Unfortunately, that's not what I got. It was a very deep conversation with some folks that I didn't know very well, some new folks to the neighborhood. And they were talking about gun control and, abortion and sexual abuse. And it was just much heavier than what I anticipated for that day. But the reaction that I had to the conversation was not a typical Candice reaction. And so I lit everybody up in that conversation and then walked away and went and spent some time with my husband and the guys. And what that really prompted me to do the next day was really look at my response and my behavior, because it just didn't sit right. It's not, again, it wasn't a normal Candice reaction. And so I really had to sit with why. Why was that so different? Why was it triggering? And when I did that, and I, again, had spent a year kind of getting my lenses clean, the information came in to my intuition that it was so conversation was so triggering for me because I had been sexually abused and I repressed it. And that just rocked my world. I had no idea that that was a thing, quite honestly, even repressing it. And so that is what really started me into the next part of my journey and really just trying to figure all the things out.
Yeah, what I love is there were 2 instances where you were describing how you started on your healing journey that really spoke to me about when your intuition kicked in.
Mhm.
When you first didn't go forward with the cortisone shot, and when you wanted to dive deeper into why your reaction was that way. And I think following, what you feel in your body is a good indication of getting on that healing journey.
Absolutely. And that was a new concept for me too, right? I wasn't one with my body at that point at all. And so really listening to it was a huge aspect of me getting back into my own intuition. So yeah, over the next few years, right? That was 2019. Over the last 5 years or so is really what I've jumped into, and just really starting to understand myself, my body, and this healing journey, and starting Indigo Soul, leaving my corporate job and helping people the way that I was helped.
Yeah, I love that. And in a few episodes, we're actually going to go deeper into listening to your body.
Mhm.
Um, so I look forward to that as well. Was there anything that you want to share that really, whether it's people or resources, that helped you during that first year when you didn't know you were on a healing journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So learning and understanding emotion code and body code were two huge pieces. There's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. That was invaluable to me. Really learning what happens when you go through a traumatic event and how your body does keep that information was a huge piece. There were a couple other folks, and to me, I went on a Candace information gathering mission. I really needed to learn about me again. I had spent so many years focused on anything and everything but me that I really had to take a step back and learn more about me. So I did a karmic astrology session where I learned more about, how my astrology and past lives, are impacting me in this life. I sought out Reiki to get some other energy healing and get perspectives that I didn't have on how the energy was impacting me. I did a quantum healing hypnosis therapy session where we typically you go into a past life with those, but for me, I went into this life and My little 5-year-old Candice was sitting in the hallway by herself. And we really dove into why was I there? Why was I by myself? It unlocked a lot of information. So I had to go outside of myself a little bit to come back in so that I could contemplate those things that were impacting me. I ended up taking a sabbatical from my corporate job and just really sat. There was a lot of stillness in this part of my journey and just, yeah, figuring out what my intuition was telling me and just learning more about myself.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, right? I've noticed that if one of the things I see in many people's journey is you go out, you get information, you meet people, you come back in, and you either digest or integrate it. So I definitely understand that. Well, one of the things that you mentioned was, or how I heard it was definitely that you were searching for something and also getting involved in a lot of new things.
Mhm.
And did you figure out that you were actually on a healing journey?
So, I was pretty clueless that I was on this journey probably until the summer of 2020, right? So, we were in the middle of the pandemic. My corporate job was on another level, busy. My husband was home 24/7. I was behind my computer about 20 of those 24 hours, and I had a meltdown. I was in my office at my home, and I just sat and cried and thought, "I can't do this anymore."
Mm.
I was just working a ridiculous amount of hours, and I needed a break, and I needed some time to really step back and understand myself better. So, it was really probably the summer of 2020 when I realized I was actually on a healing journey.
And so a little over a year.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah, I'd love to know how common that is for people, right? To be on it for a good period of time before realizing really what they've embarked upon.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, if you could share something with other people that you think would help them on their journey, any advice?
Ooh, so many lessons learned in this process. I think I would for me, the thing that helped me the most was slowing down. So it was getting to the point where I knew things were too much and then listening to that, listening to my body, and then doing something that was really kind of out of character, which was taking a break. I've worked since I was probably 12 or 13. I had a paper route right before I started working at a grocery store when I was 15. So I've been in this hustle for a long time, and taking a break is kind of foreign. And I think a lot of people fall into that. And so once I had the nudge that it was time to take that break and listened to it, is when the bulk of the other information around my trauma came in. So I would say when you get that little nudge that you need to slow down or you need to gather information outside of yourself, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, I love that. I think what you said was similar with me too, right? Taking that time, right? So much of what we do is checking boxes and try to, prove to a job or family, we've got it all under control. And really, when you kind of let go and slow down, that's really where you get to what you need to be getting to.
Yeah. And the other piece, and I think it's similar for you, is in my quest to do all the things in life that I was supposed to be doing, right? Climbing the corporate ladder, being a good wife, trying to start a family unsuccessfully, I isolated myself. And so in the quest of learning who Candace was again, I had to spend some time in community. I had to build a community. I had to find a community. And so I would also encourage people to step outside of what they normally would do and find some places that they can spend some time in community, whether that's an art class, whether it's a astrology class, some wherever, whatever you decide to do, just being in community and building some support for yourself is also a big piece.
Yeah, so if I kind of just summarize what I think I heard you say, the big pieces were listening to your body, finding community, and slowing down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Well, now that I have shared my information, Shelly, why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of your information?
Sure. So mine started about the same time, or guess 2018. So I think you said 2019 for you. So some similar time. Many of the pieces that you mentioned rang true with me as well. I don't think I knew that I was on my healing journey for over a year.
Mm-hmm.
The big pieces for me, I mentioned, you searching outside of yourself for information and direction. I could clearly look back and see that I was doing that. The books that I was reading really changed. They went from being, love stories to self help books.
Mm.
One of the biggest books being a book called Scary Close by Donald Miller, I think it is. But he mentioned words that I knew were intriguing to me: vulnerability, safe people, looking for a refuge. And I really couldn't identify with those things. So the books changed. And then I kept having, I'll say, questioning with myself. This is how I've lived the last 20 years. Do I want to live another 20 years this same way?
Mm-hmm.
And I really didn't know what to do, but I did know that I didn't want to do that. I also had a couple instances that, looking back, I can't believe that they didn't shock me more, but I knew someone was helping me. There were a couple times that I'd really asked, help me find this, help me understand. And I can remember one day it was almost like someone actually put a spotlight onto a place that I needed to go look. And it was an answer to a question that I had been asking. In this case, I knew that something was going on in the relationship with my husband. I just couldn't quite tack it down. And the light and the voice took me right to what I was looking for. What what blows my mind about being in the rat race is that knowing that someone was helping me didn't even cross my mind. I didn't even take like a second glance at it, right? I was so focused
Mm-hmm.
on what it meant to find that it just, I was such a different viewpoint, right? Today it's like, oh my gosh, there's magic in the world. And then in that time and place, it didn't feel that way. But I think the biggest thing was when I realized something needed to be different.
Mm.
The fact that I was searching for something outside of, a house, a job, my family, my current situation. That's the piece that it took me. It happened probably a year or so, if not two, before I caught on to exactly what I was doing. But again, much like you said, really focused on myself, quieting everything else down, slowing it down, and then saying, what do we want to do? What do we need to do?
Yeah.
And knowing it was really about me.
Yeah. It's amazing to me how much time we spend not paying attention to ourselves,
I mean, I think we look for things to distract us.
right? We both did a really good job at that. So, what are talk to us a little bit about in your exploration of yourself in your healing journey? You mentioned a couple of them already, but what were some of the first topics or first things that you really started to look at when you started, either before you knew you were on the journey or once you knew you were on the journey?
Sure. So I mentioned the book that I read that had a your partner should be like a refuge for you. That concept really, I can't tell you how many times I repeated it over and over in my head, right? What does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that mean? How would I be that to someone? Vulnerability, man. For anybody that knows, Brene Brown, right, is the vulnerability queen. And
Mhm.
those two words I really stuck with. So I'd say I spent a lot of time with those two words, being a refuge for someone and being vulnerable. The other thing that really intrigued me, I mentioned that a voice or someone, something was helping me, and I went on a search. I wanted to know their name. I wanted to know what they do, who that was. And so I had started going to yoga, which sent me to a lady who read palms and did tarot readings. And I told her, I want to know who that voice is. And in trying to identify who that voice was, I ended up in a meeting your spirit guides class. And I don't know if I'd have known what to do without that.
Yeah. I've also taken that class, different class than you, different teacher. But man, that's eye-opening, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that, the part that was hard for me is I was like, there's this whole team of people that has just been waiting to talk to me.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, for people who are thinking that, as a little kid, had always heard that angels were there to help us, but I
Mhm.
didn't know their names.
Right.
And now there were guides and there were angels. Frankly, I didn't know what to do with that concept, but that's what really propelled me not only on the healing journey, but just in general, being interested in intuition and
Mm.
healing and having a conversation with that team of people.
Mhm. Now, we met after we both really had been on our journey for a little bit, and I've always known you to have very acute intuition. And so if you didn't have that all along, meeting your spirit guides, I'm sure increased that. Is there anything else that you were able to really understand what your intuition was and how you discerned that, and then that connection into your healing?
So I think that probably the biggest misconception I had at the beginning was thinking that the intuition was outside of myself and only with that team. I can tell you that there were times that I sat right and tried all the methods where they were like stare at the wall, narrow your gaze, blur your gaze, right? Look for people. And it turns out that most of my gift isn't seeing. So all those exercises weren't that helpful. I hear things. But the biggest part I think that helped with my intuition, and I think it's still, I'll say something that I work on today. You and I were just talking about it earlier this weekend, but trusting myself.
Mhm.
When you either been taught or because of, trauma or things that happen, we turn off our intuition.
Mhm.
We don't listen to ourselves or we make promises to ourselves that we don't keep. And I certainly had done a lot of that. Then listening to my heart, listening to my intuition,
Mm.
those things weren't working well, right? But, you talked about kind of cleaning out all the things that weren't yours, right? As I cleaned out the things that didn't belong to me, as well as the things that I had done to me,
Mhm.
which, is, my sometimes we're the hardest on ourselves.
Oh, for sure.
And so I had been really hard on myself. I had really let myself down in a number of ways. And so really working to rebuild that trust, self-love
Mm.
really did a lot to help me with intuition. So my team is fabulous and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger, but that piece, the relationship with myself is just as big, if not, well, probably the biggest part rather than my relationship with my guides and my angels,
Mhm.
the rest of my team. So self-love, trusting yourself, and I mentioned the refuge for someone. I needed to be a refuge for myself.
Mhm.
Those are big pieces to really expanding my intuition and leaning on it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that for me, that took a little bit, right? So we talk about this as a journey and it's nonlinear. And, sometimes we take a step forward and we take two steps back in this process, but really understanding yourself, learning what that self-love concept is. Is there a Was there a moment in time where you were forced to, or you felt like you didn't have any other choice but to love yourself? Was there like a critical moment there for you?
Yeah, I think decisions aren't always easy when they are not what you want. And choosing to take care of yourself can be difficult. I think in the self-love journey, the biggest aha moment for me is I had spent 20 years of my life saying, "Why can't people hear me? Why don't they hear anything that I say?" And the biggest eye-opening moment was realizing that I needed to hear myself and
Mm,
listen to myself.
mhm,
So I'd say that was I can just remember being like, is it take a bath? Is it exercise? Is it food? And it was all the things that I wanted from other people, giving them to myself.
mm,
And hearing myself was the biggest thing, right? What is it that I'm asking for and giving that to myself?
mhm.
So it blew my mind that day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also slightly embarrassing, right? When you realize that you've been asking others to give something that you wouldn't give yourself.
Mhm. Yeah. Huge lessons.
Yeah, we can definitely talk more about self-love on
We will, for sure. We've both had our own journeys there as well. Well, this was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us today.
Yeah, thank you, Candace.
As we conclude this episode of Healers with Humor, we want to express our deepest gratitude to you, fellow Brightlights. Thank you for joining us on this heartfelt exploration. Our journey began with a chance encounter at an expo, two souls seeking healing and connection. Through shared experiences, laughter, and tears, we forged a bond rooted in trust, love, and the relentless pursuit of growth. We invite you to continue this journey with us by sharing your own healing stories and connecting with us. Your presence in our community enriches our collective healing experience, and we're honored to walk alongside you. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll explore topics that resonate with the soul, offering insights, guidance, and inspiration along the way. Until then, remember, you are not alone on your healing journey. Thank you for tuning in, and may your path be illuminated with love, courage, and endless possibilities.